we get started is that I'm in a 2-year anniversary of a day that I woke up because I got in a car accident 2 years ago and broke my skull. I was sitting in my car in Austin at a stoplight, and Texas has these highways that just come to a stoplight. Don't ask me why.
Oh.
It's an accident waiting to happen, literally. So the next thing I know, I wake up in the ambulance and I'm asking what's going on. Long story short, I fractured my skull. I'm okay now. It changed my life. It made me realize life is short. There's no time to waste. I was wasting a lot of time, and now I'm ready to just get with it. And, I'm all about just being true to your purpose and living your life for what your light is. And my light happens to be right now to try to figure out what the hell is going on with our country, because a lot of people know right now that things just aren't quite right. And it's been that way for a long time. Now people are starting to ask questions, and people are looking for answers. People are looking for facts. I can tell you that.
People are no longer satisfied, and a whole bunch of free-thinking Americans and independent-thinking Americans, and we're binding together to help each other figure this out, I think, and that's a good thing.
So, that being said, we were listening to one of my favorite songs, I'll Fly Away. I sang that at my father's funeral. My father would have loved you. He would have married you. He wouldn't have cared what you looked like. He would have married you because he believes, and I still want to send you his videos. He ran against the war in Iraq, basically.
Cool.
He spent money to go get on the ballot because no one would speak up. Everyone was scared to say anything to certain individuals that were running the show. And he just couldn't stand it. And he spent his money and went up to New Hampshire and got on the ballot and actually got more votes than Hillary Clinton, who was not on the ballot. But he made a statement, and people they were listening to him. And a lot of people picked up his rhetoric. And if we looked at what his 4-point thesis was for creating peace, it all goes back to the Middle East. Every bit of it goes back to undoing what has been done in the Middle East. Now, I don't want to necessarily get into that, because what I'm here to do tonight is to reveal to anyone that comes to my page, and I hope that's a lot of people, what I've found and what is out there. There's so much out there. Susan Lindauer has a story to tell, and it's a real story. Forget the Kardashians. Forget Bieber. This is a real, honest-to-God story that is, I've started reading the book, and I can tell you it's a really good book. So, that being said, can you just give us a little background and just where are we going from here?
Thank you. I appreciate that so much, and I believe in my heart that across America right now there are people who want to save our country and want to get it on the right track, and we're all trying to find a way to make that happen. And I do believe that we've got to move towards some peace, and we've got to move towards supporting, peaceful dialogue solutions. I mean, what we're seeing in the Middle East right now is what happens when you lose control of that, and we want to move back. We want to change this situation.
So, what happened to you? Why are you on my show?
My story is a spy thriller and a page turner for sure. I think it's a real life story, though. I was a U.S. asset, one of the very few U.S. assets covering Iraq before the war.
So you were posted. I'm sorry.
Yeah, when I say one of the very few, I mean there were in the whole world. Now this is hard for people to really understand, but in the whole world, there were probably 10 or 12 of us, because Iraq was so isolated internationally because of the United Nations sanctions that the intelligence communities had been completely cut off from the Iraqis. And that was, a policy design, but there were severe consequences to that. And so my role, I was covering the United Nations. I covered Iraq at the United Nations, and what that meant was that I was having meetings I live in Washington, D.C., but I was traveling up to New York about every 3 weeks. And I was meeting with diplomats at the Iraqi embassy and also at the Libyan embassy. and but I was not just off on my own. I was being supervised by the CIA and the Defense Intelligence Agency. Both agencies were debriefing me every single week. None of your listeners have to worry that somebody would be off dealing with Iraq and Libya without somebody paying very close attention to it. It would never happen. And because in fact, this is, I think, an example where the CIA got it right, that they recognized that even though the sanctions were on, they needed to keep a back channel open in case things were happening so that they could communicate back and forth. So the Iraqis were totally aware of my identity and my purpose. The Libyans were aware of my identity and my purpose, but we kept it out of the Western media because it would have been very controversial if the Western media had discovered that this was happening. You see? So it's ironic because they knew what it was, but you didn't.
So you were, okay, so you're...
it's called an asset.
You were an asset for Iraq and Libya? Is that what you just said?
I was an asset for the United States.
For the United States, but you were
covering Iraq and Libya.
Okay, so were you going to Iraq and Libya? And I in your book, I read that you were in the embassy. You were in the Iraqi embassy.
I was. My work was done at the Iraqi embassy at the United Nations. So it was almost like a junior diplomat situation. It really shows, to be honest with you, how bad sanctions are, because the world cannot afford to break off communications with any country. It's a very bad practice. If something's going wrong, who do you need to talk to? You especially need to have a channel for communication with the countries that are having problems. You don't want to ignore those countries because of the problems get worse. So I was in a prized position. My CIA handler was a man named Dr. Richard Fuisz.
Now, hold on. I'm sorry, I haven't gotten far enough into your book to find out, but is he still alive?
He is still alive.
Well, you say was, and I'm wondering if maybe you just don't have contact with him anymore, and that's why you say was.
Well, I do not have contact with him anymore. Once my personal tragedy struck, I was disavowed.
And I know he's in the very beginning of the book, and he has a line in there that to me screams what we need to be doing right now, which is if something is happening to you that is not just, you must speak up. And that's what you did. And that's what he told you needed to be prepared to do. Right?
Exactly. You don't get into this business if you're gonna run away and put your head in the sand. It's like if you engage with these countries, you have some serious responsibilities, and if you discover something, you have to do something about it, because otherwise, what's the point? I mean, that's the irony of the whole situation that I faced. And my book is called Extreme Prejudice: The Terrifying Story of the Patriot Act and the Cover-Ups of 9/11 and Iraq.
And you can find it on my webpage, slackey.org, slackey.org. And if you're watching this, you probably are there already. So all you got to do is go to Slackey's Picks and go down and find the little link where it says Extreme Prejudice. Click on it, and you're there.
Wonderful,
you could do that anytime. And if anybody that's listening right now, I invite you to do that, because you'll get, you can order the book right now on Amazon.com. Is that right?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, that's
and
what I do.
BarnesandNoble.com as well.
Oh.
But I'll tell you something. This is a really important story, because this is the information that the government has fought so hard to hide. And unfortunately, it really has deprived the people of accountability. Whether you're conservative or progressive, it doesn't matter. This is about the people's right to have the information so that you can make decisions with real facts. And you may reach different conclusions than I reach, or than Aubrey reaches. But we are a democracy, and that means that the people have a right to know, and they have a right to make informed decisions. Informed decision-making is better for democracy because then we are all more aware of the choices that we face and the consequences and the complications. So I'm a huge believer in accountability to the people.
Well, I don't look, I don't want to, I'm not trying to pee on your fire, if you will, but I have to play devil's advocate and ask you where the concept of clear and present danger and need to know where they come in.
Oh, yeah, that's well, I will tell you that our back channel, that is the question of our age. That is a really serious question because, for example, during the whole period that I was doing this work, the back channel, if we had made our back channel public knowledge, media forces, the corporate media, the international, there would have been heavy pressure to shut it down and to play games with it and manipulate it. The fact that it existed had to be secret in order for it to work.
See, now I very
interesting.
I very specifically remember though, and I'm not stupid. I remember the press coming out and saying, "Well, the UN." Or Saddam Hussein in Iraq is saying, "Come on in, check us out."
That's right.
And everyone, and apparently, it had already passed, whatever the UN or George Bush decided he was just going to do it anyway. And I just remember thinking, "What? Are you kidding me?" It sounds to me like he's bending over backwards because he doesn't want to lose his power, and he's going to let us come in. How come people couldn't smell the rat then? The press actually had that story.
Yes, indeed. And the thing is that I think it is the challenge that we're going to face in this generation is deciding when intelligence is legitimately classified and should not be shared with the public, and when are security clearances and such being used to protect incompetent politicians who are making bad decisions, who are jeopardizing our security because they can get away with it because nobody really knows what's going on, and that is the balancing act of our current age, I think. But in this case, I believe that I was a child of black ops. When I started, almost immediately when I got to Washington, I got tapped for this. And I was supervised constantly, and the stuff we did was anti-terrorism work. But there was, before anything was ever released to the public, like on Lockerbie, my team was responsible for exposing the fact that actually, guys, Libya did not have anything to do with Lockerbie. I know that right now, today, everybody's really mad at Gaddafi, and they're jumping on Gaddafi and they're saying, "Get him, take this guy down." There are good reasons why you should take him down, but the facts are that he had nothing to do with Lockerbie. And you should know what the facts are because they will help you now make better decisions. For example, the real story about Lockerbie is that the CIA, there had been, it was tied to the hostage kidnappings of Terry Anderson and about 20 other people. And about 20 Westerners were being held in captivity in Lebanon in the back alleys and by jihadis. And these were very dangerous men who had absolutely no moral compunctions at all. They had kidnapped what was known was that they had kidnapped the director of the station chief of the CIA, and they had beat him to death so badly that they beat him with bricks, concrete, chains. They electrocuted